Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? If you're an introvert and a deep thinker, you know just how challenging it is to live in a world designed for extroverts and, well, small talk. And in this video, I want to explore what it means to be a reflective, truth-seeking person in a shallow, performance-driven culture. A couple of days ago, I was having a conversation with a friend. He's a couple of decades younger than I am. He's also in recovery, but he's definitely introverted. He's highly intelligent, and he was describing some of the difficulties he was having navigating relationships with his peers. I could relate to a lot of what he was talking about because I've experienced these same things myself. He was talking about kind of feeling like the odd man out, like feeling sort of alone in a crowd, not really being included in the decision-making process of what they might do because he's a member of a group of peers in terms of like age and what have you, and just feeling like he was invited very often as an afterthought. He didn't quite fit in. Sometimes his friends tried to draw him out of his shell a little bit more and get him to go to more events. Very often he wasn't really interested in the things they were doing. And, they would call him up trying to get him to go out. And he was wondering, is this solitude something that it's good for me, or am I avoiding something? Now, there was a lot to unpack in this conversation. But one of the things I noticed was he was comparing himself to people whose values he really didn't share. And I don't mean all the values. I meant a lot of the things that were important to them just really didn't matter to him. It was really apparent that a lot of the things that his friends or his peer group, if they were even really his peer group, were interested in were things like, the usual status and money and, doing things, gaining possessions, all that stuff that would shout material success or success in life. It can be really tricky as an introvert because we kind of live in this no man's land between painful isolation and needed solitude. This alone time can either be recovery or retreat, and it's not clear very often until we really unpack it and say, what exactly are my reasons for withdrawing? I talked with him at length about this because it's really important to unpack what's going on. Am I retreating because this is something that's not going to be good for me, that doesn't really feed my soul, if you will? Or am I kind of retreating because this is going to be uncomfortable, this is going to be a stretch? Because a lot of times, as introverts, we still crave connection with people, actually really deep connection, but we want these meaningful relationships, not these surface level ones. And a lot of those surface level ones can be just kind of annoying. The world kind of thrives on small talk, and this can be really, really frustrating and tiring as an introvert or as a deep thinker, somebody that's really reflective, because it just seems so unnecessary. At work, there are some people that I avoid from time to time. They're really nice people, but I know as soon as I see them, I'm going to get this barrage of small talk, and I'm going to make small talk back with them, and then I'm going to walk away from that interaction saying to myself, why the hell did I even say that? I don't even really mean that. Was this all just an act? Are we all just acting? Why the hell would I even participate in that? Sometimes we see too much. We can start to see behind the facade. You start to see that everybody's wearing a mask. And you're wondering, what's the point of all this? Can we just talk about things that are meaningful or not waste our time talking? And my friend could certainly relate to that, or he was telling me a lot of things like that. The problem that we can run into very often is that we read too much into things that people say or don't say. There's times when we can be overly judgmental and kind of even feel superior, and that is not necessarily a good thing. Yeah, there's certainly times I feel superior because I think, well, I'm smarter than that person, or I care about things that really mean something. But that can get you in a lot of trouble and really isolate you from a lot of people, that, especially ones that can do you some good. Recently, I was reminded of this idea that a lot of times small talk is not completely useless. Very often we're kind of feeling each other out. Is this person safe to talk to? And then after that, you can get into some really good conversations. My girlfriend was even reminding me of this today, this idea that once you get past that, you can find that there's these people that, if you keep pushing, if you keep, digging, you can find some people that have some really, great perspectives, and you've just taken the time to get to know each other. I've certainly had those experiences, but it takes that small talk first to get the ball rolling, which can be pretty freaking annoying. I think that people like us really have a hard time with hustle culture as well, because we can start to see behind it and see just how shallow it actually is. It really doesn't have any sort of meaning, or people are trying to create their sense of worth through being busy, through the acquisition of money and other things as an end unto itself. And even worse than that, there's this moralization of doing that. If you're not hustling, if you're not going after those things, there's something desperately wrong with you. And one of the things my friend and I were talking about was like he felt less than, or he felt a little bit judged by his friends because many of them were successful. They're in businesses. They're really hustling. They have possessions. They have, they can go on more vacations. They can do more stuff than he can right now. And there was a certain point where he felt like less than because he hasn't really been there. And trust me, I can relate. If you've watched my videos, you can definitely understand that when I compare myself with my peers that are at my age. But there was more than that. I think he was seeing or feeling like they might be judging him because he wasn't doing that, because that wasn't entirely on his radar. And this is where you have to be really careful, because very often we can project our own insecurities onto the people around us. I know this firsthand, because when you feel like you don't belong in the world full of extroverts, when you don't quite fit in with your friend group, you can really start to think that they're judging you a lot more than they actually are. And of course, I told him, listen, if they're really judging you, well, they can go fuck themselves. They're not really your friends. But if you're feeling uncomfortable because you don't quite mesh with them, but they still like you anyway, maybe you're putting too much thought into that. Maybe at the end of the day, they just kind of like you as a person. Society very often kind of like puts or equates our worth to things like our productivity and to how much money we have and to all the showings of status, all the little status symbols and the clothing you wear and all this kind of BS. But a lot of times, all the time, your real value is in being yourself and being a human being. And very often your friends who have different priorities than you in a lot of other ways still value you as a human being. And that's one of the things this young man, when I say young man, he's probably 35, and I were talking about, is you have to kind of figure out, okay, which is it? Are you really being excluded, really being judged, or is it all in your head? And these people actually really like you and just want you there for your company. And that can be really tough to figure out, especially when you tend to be sensitive and an overthinker and really kind of read stuff that might not be happening. But very often you're not really sure, am I imagining this, or am I seeing something that other people don't see? Very often we are seeing more than other people see, or at least we're paying attention to it. While other people tend to gloss over and focus on whatever's right in front of them, their goals, a lot of times people like us can really start to think about the deeper implications of things, can start to do those, one thought follows another, and where is this all actually going? Looking at the meaning or lack of meaning in a lot of things, and to start to see what's really important. And some of us are much more socially attuned than others and can see some of the things that are happening that might just be brushed off by somebody else or not even noticed. But of course, humans are based on or very good at pattern recognition, and sometimes we get it wrong because we tend to see patterns everywhere, even when there are none. There's a certain sense of weight in being an introvert and being introspective, because very often we see so much, we think about so much, that it's really hard to just kind of let go and enjoy the moment because we've got so much on our mind. We're seeing so many patterns, a lot of which are actually real. And sometimes in the search for meaning, it's hardest for us because other people can find meaning in things that just seem absolutely ridiculous and shallow and kind of meaningless. Whereas very often we're looking for something a lot more substantive. Extroverts very often, they thrive on activities with each other. Well, we thrive on these connections, about talking about really deep subjects, about thinking about deep subjects, about the nature of reality and all this kind of BS. These things matter to us. When our friends are talking about sporting events or money or fashion or all this kind of stuff, it can feel like we're just kind of we're in the wrong place. And who are my real people? And finding your real people as an introvert, as a deep thinker, is something that's incredibly important. And I have taken the time to find my people. And even then, sometimes I don't feel the full connection because I pull back and isolate because I need the time alone. And so I need to go back and reforge those connections. But you need to find the people that you can have those deep connections with, those deep conversations with, think those big thoughts with. And, unfortunately, I have one in Susan, and I have some other friends in the RPG community, in the recovery community that I can talk to. And as I was talking to my friend, one of the things I had to tell him was like, listen, it's not going to be everybody. It's not going to be everybody in your entire world. There's going to be a lot of people you're going to have superficial relationships with, and that's okay. You just need a few people that you can talk to, that you can go to, and sometimes it's just because you're in trouble and you need some help. But sometimes it's because you need to be stimulated. You need to find your people intellectually. You need to find your people that you're going to be able to, have those conversations with and not just stay in your head about all this stuff. When you don't do that, it's way, way too easy to start judging yourself based upon what the rest of the world looks like and starting to believe that you not just don't fit in, but you don't matter, that there's something dreadfully wrong with you. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're just wired differently. In a lot of ways, you're wired better. Or we're the people that come up with the creative thoughts. We're the people that kind of come up with all the synthesis, the people that start to understand the deeper structure. Man, doesn't it sound heady and egotistical? But you know what I mean? The world needs people like us just as much as it needs the extroverted people that go a million miles an hour and do all kinds of stuff. We do a whole bunch of stuff as well. We just do it in a way that they can't always see. Just as bad as not finding your people is when you just try to fit in where you really don't. And I don't mean you don't fit in with other people, but when you try to mold yourself into being a person that the world expects you to be, more extroverted, caring about things you just don't care about, going after the trappings of success you don't care about. I mean, think of all the things I talk about on my channel lately about not liking my job and not really being happy with the things I'm doing in my life and wanting to do the things that bring me more joy. Well, that's more about being authentic. And very often for a person that's a deeper thinker, an introvert, a more creative person, it's painful to do that sometimes because you feel rejected or misunderstood by the world. That's part of the burden we carry, which is one of those reasons you need to find your people, and you also need to stop pretending that you're not who you are. It's hard to trust yourself when you're like this because almost everything you see is a completely different picture of what a person's supposed to be. And, we can look at ourselves and say, gosh, what's really wrong with me? Learn to trust yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. Hey, dogs, I'm trying to make a video. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just different than other people. Trust yourself. Be cool with who you are because it's pretty awesome. Don't hide that. Let me know if you can relate to any of this. I would love to hear your experiences, your comments, if you think I'm completely off my rocker, if you're an introvert and you can relate and what your experiences have been, and if you're an extrovert and you think I'm full of crap or you just can't understand. I would love to hear it all. If you want to support the channel, you can always like the video, subscribe, and of course you can use a super thanks, which is somewhere down there, to throw me a buck or two. And I will put a video somewhere around here that's really, really awesome, just like you and me.